Hey everyone, welcome to this week's episode. Today we'll be talking about the recent conflict between Israel and Palestine, so let's get started.
To fully understand what's happening with the Israel and Palestine situation currently, we need to further understand how Israel came about as a country and the relationship between the two. So, for a little bit of history between the two, in the 16th century, the Ottomans ruled over the land, which was ethnically diverse, including Arabs, Jews, and other groups. And after the fall of the Ottoman Empire, the area was placed under the British Mandate from 1917 to 1947, which was required to establish an official national home for the Jewish survivors after the Nazi persecution in World War I. However, this establishment caused the Jewish population in Europe to massively immigrate to Palestine, which resulted in Arab resistance and rebellion with the tension between Arabs and Jews. And despite these violent protests, the responsibility of creating a national home for the Jewish people has been switched from the British Mandate to the UN. And in 1947, the United Nations proposed a partition plan that would have created separate Jewish and Arab states in Palestine, with Jerusalem under international administration. And the plan was accepted by the Jews, but rejected by the Arab states, leading to the First Arab-Israeli War in 1948. Several Arab-Israeli wars followed after this, including the Suez Crisis in 1956, the Six-Day War in 1967, and the Yom Kippur War in 1973. And these wars resulted in changes in territorial boundaries and ongoing tensions. Let's dig deeper into the Yom Kippur War. So, it was a conflict that took place in 1973 between Israel and a coalition of Arab states led by Egypt and Syria. The war essentially began when Egypt and Syria launched a surprise attack on Israel on the holy day of Yom Kippur, and the attack was well coordinated and caught the Israeli military off guard. So Egypt and Syria then launched simultaneous offensives in the Sinai Peninsula and the Golan Heights. So Israel eventually managed to regroup and launch counterattacks with strong support from the United States, which supplied them with weapons and equipment. The conflict basically turned into a fierce and costly battle. A ceasefire was negotiated and ended in 1973 and ultimately changed the dynamics of the Middle East. So, this was considered the most significant Arab Israeli conflict. Though there has been multiple peace efforts after these wars, Israel continues to build settlements that violate those negotiations, which strains their relationship even more. Now let's talk about the Gaza Strip that is significant to the conflict going on recently. So, the Gaza Strip is part of the Palestinian territories and is home to a predominantly Palestinian Arab population, and it's one of the two main areas that make up the Palestinian territories, the other being the West Bank. And the Gaza Strip has been a focal point of the Israeli Palestinian conflict for many years, and it was occupied by Israel following the 1967 Six Day War and remained under Israeli control until 2005, when Israel withdrew its troops and settlements from the area. Since then, it has been governed by the Palestinian political and militant group, the Hamas, which is considered a terrorist organization by Israel, United States, and other countries. And Israel and Egypt maintain a blockade on the Gaza Strip that controls its borders, airspace, and access to the sea. And this blockade has led to a significant amount of restrictions on the movement of people and goods in and out of the Gaza, and has had a profound impact on the economy and living conditions of its residents.
So, now recently, what is going on between Israel and Palestine? The ongoing conflict between Hamas led Palestinian militant groups and Israel began on October 7, 2023, coinciding with the end of the Sukkot Jewish holiday, exactly 50 years after the start of the 1973 Yom Kippur War. In a coordinated surprise attack, Hamas launched over 5,000 rockets from the Gaza Strip into Israel, while approximately 2,500 Palestinian militants breached the Gaza-Israel barrier, attacking civilian communities and IDF military bases near Gaza. This resulted in over 1,400 Israeli casualties, predominantly civilians, including 260 people, at a music festival in Reim. Many civilians, including women, children, and the elderly, were taken hostage and transported to Gaza. Israel initiated retaliatory strikes before officially declaring war on Hamas a day later. This escalation in violence is the most intense since the Yom Kippur War and is part of the long-standing Israeli-Palestinian conflict that began in May 1948, with recent military activities primarily centered around the Gaza Strip since 2005. Despite avoiding major engagements with Israel in 2022 and most of 2023, Hamas has been covertly preparing for a significant offensive. Hamas claimed to have received support from Iran for the attack, although Israel and the US stated there was no concrete evidence of Iran's involvement, which Iran also denied. Hamas cited reasons for the attack as a response to the Gaza Strip blockade, ongoing Israeli settlements, settler violence, and movement restrictions between Israel and Gaza. Israel cleared Hamas forces from the affected Israeli communities and conducted airstrikes in Gaza, resulting in over 5,000 Palestinian casualties. Concerns about a humanitarian crisis grew as Israel cut off essential supplies to Gaza, which was already under blockade by Egypt and Israel. The United Nations reported that approximately 1 million Palestinians, nearly half of Gaza's population, were internally displaced. Calls for an immediate ceasefire came from the United Nations and numerous countries, while human rights groups urged support for Gazan refugees created by the conflicts. Both Israel and Hamas were accused of war crimes by a panel of United Nations special reporters and human rights organizations due to widespread civilian casualties. Around 44 nations, primarily from the Western world, condemned Hamas and labeled its actions as terrorism, including a joint statement from the United States, the United Kingdom, France, Italy, and Germany. In contrast, many Middle Eastern countries called for de-escalation and pointed to Israel's long-standing occupation of Palestinian territories as the root cause. Iran warned Israel to cease military aggression against Gaza and threatened to intervene if Israel initiated a ground invasion. On October 17, 2023, there was an explosion in the parking lot of Al Ali Arab Hospital in Gaza. This incident resulted in a significant number of fatalities and injuries. The hospital, situated in the northern part of the Gaza Strip, had received evacuation orders from Israel 4 days prior. Many displaced Palestinians were seeking refuge at the hospital when the explosion occurred. The exact number of fatalities remain uncertain, with varying reports. Initially, the Hamas-run Gaza Health Ministry reported over 500 deaths, but later revised the count to 471. The Anglican diocese, which manages the hospital, believes approximately 200 people died in the explosion, while U.S. intelligence agencies estimated a death toll ranging from 100 to 300. The cause of the explosion is a matter of dispute. Israel, the United States, France, the United Kingdom, and Canada asserted that their intelligence sources indicated the explosion resulted from a failed rocket launch by the Palestinian Islamic Jihad within Gaza, also known as the PIJ. However, the PIJ denied any involvement, and Hamas claimed that Israel conducted an airstrike on the hospital. Based on video analysis and the extent of the damage caused by the impact, experts largely agree that a misfired Palestinian rocket launched at Israel from within Gaza was the likely cause of the explosion.
Now we're going to be getting into a little bit of politics that is surrounding the current Israel and Palestine situation right now. So, as of right now, Biden and the US government is publicly standing with Israel as well as supporting them with food and water supplies. And major companies like McDonald's, Disney, and Starbucks have also publicly supported Israel by speaking out and condemning the attack of the Hamas. And President Biden has sent out Navy ships as well as planes to the Middle East in order to support Israeli defense forces. And he also plans to ask Congress for $14 billion in aiding Israel. But on the other hand, Biden also announces only $100 million to the Gaza Strip. And despite this seemingly helpful support, citizens in the Gaza Strip are still currently blocked off from food, water, and electricity, as well as a blockade, so they have nowhere to hide and no food or water supplies. Now let's move on to my personal thoughts. So, this isn't really like a personal thought, it's just a very well known fact. But if you say that you support Israel, then you support genocide. There's no question to that. In hindsight, that statement sounds very biased and very one sided, but for more context, the Israeli government is bombing hospitals in Palestine, which is considered a war crime. But this situation isn't even considered a war. The Palestine and Israel um, situation is not a war, it is a genocide. Yes, the Hamas did start the conflict. However, the Israeli government is backed up by the US. Not to mention, they have one of the best military forces in the world. And they are constantly bombing people trapped in the Gaza Strip as well as innocent hospitals with doctors inside. So, bombing doctors and innocent children means that there's no way for the people in the Gaza Strip to recover. I'm kind of straying away from the actual situation on a factual basis and more on like a morality basis. But yeah, going back to the I Stand With Israel thing, it's okay to say that you support the victims that were harmed by the Hamas in Israel. However, by saying you stand with Israel, you're going against Palestine and you're saying that you support the genocide happening in Palestine. I just feel like overall people on the internet are very misinformed, and I feel like they're just picking sides when this conflict is more than just choosing which side you support. It is very multifaceted and it's very complicated, and you can't just choose which side you support. Especially celebrities. Like one celebrity that stood out to me was Noah Schnapp from Stranger Things, who is Jewish American, and he recently posted on his story or on Instagram or any other social media platform that he is scared for his people and he stands with Israel. Now, it's okay to say that you support the people in Israel, like you support the victims that were harmed or killed by Hamas attack. However, it's not okay to say that you support the government and that you stand with Israel, because there are more people in Palestine being murdered, brutally murdered, and most of them are children, considering the fact that more than 54% of the Palestinian population are under 18. And just overall, this is way more than a war. This is a genocide occurring in Palestine. And I feel that most people fail to recognize that, especially because I've been seeing a lot of news networks labeling this as a war when it's actually not a war. It's one sided. And another thing I want to talk about is the thing with Trump and Biden, where Trump recently posted a Stand with Palestine post on Twitter, I believe, and multiple Trump supporters or Republicans took this chance to praise and glorify him and use this opportunity to put backlash on Biden. And I feel like this is just very, very tone deaf, because you're using a genocide to bring Trump like high into his pedestal and bring Biden down and backlash on him. Overall, I think one thing we can all take away from this situation is to get yourself educated and try to stay away from false or misinformed news as much as possible.